In Module 5, we take a look at the history of education in the world. It's a very, very expansive kind of a topic, one that we're not likely to do justice with. But it is important that any educator is well familiar with their field. If you can imagine a parent taking a look at you as a teacher and saying, this is a knowledgeable person and I'm entrusting my child and their education to this person for a significant amount of their childhood, the question has to arise in a parent's mind about whether or not they're handing their child over to an educated person themselves. And if you don't understand much about the field that you're in, if you don't know the history behind education and some of the issues that we have to grapple with, then you're likely to be perceived as not knowing what you should know. And if parents see you that way, then the amount of trust that they've got in you to work with their kids is going to fall. So in this module, we present a lot of information about what we think of as foundations of education, that history that has led us to where we are. You won't have much in the way of assignments in this module, but there is a lot more reading, and there's a series of videos that are important for you to watch. And of course, all this material is going to be assessed on the test. But as far as activities for this module, it's relatively light. We'll be reading chapters 5 and 6 in this module. And the 4 PBS videos they essentially show how education in America has changed since the earliest times to today. There are certain kinds of movements and pressures that impacted how we viewed our schools and what the government did in terms of setting up the schools and who was in charge of them, how teachers were treated. There's just a lot of material about that. And these videos are put together by some of the best educational historians in the country. It's kind of done, if you've seen any of these Ken Burns films about, he's done them on a number of topics, sports and certain public figures, the Civil War. They'll take photographs from the time or little documents from the time, and they'll show them, and then they produce a narrative that kind of describes what's going on as they go through. It's a very nicely produced set of videos. We also ask you to consider the very foundations of why it is that we educate the public. One of the things that you'll notice as you read through the history is that the people that really got educated throughout most of our history were boys, typically the sons of wealthy fathers, and educational opportunity was not seen as being necessarily important for all citizens. That starts to change about the time, or a little bit before the time when America was forming, and it has a great impact on how we viewed education in the United States. So to have you focus on a bit of those very initial impulses toward public education, we ask you to take a look at Martin Luther. Not Martin Luther King Jr., but Martin Luther, the Catholic monk in Europe who really precipitated the Protestant Reformation. And we're going to ask you to identify the key elements there that made the public worth teaching. And if the public's worth teaching, if it's important that we have a literate public, then that is a strong motivation for having everyone educated through a system of publicly supported schools. So we ask you to consider that. And then we'll engage in a bit of a discussion about the impact of the Reformation on education in this module's discussion board. So I hope that you will come to understand some things about the field that you are anticipating entering, and that you'll have a successful module.